One of the questions I'm frequently asked is, where do we put money? Before we actually start identifying specific investment vehicles and investment choices, I think it's important to perhaps maybe create a criteria in terms of what might make a little bit of sense. Now, here's my take. Now, some of you may agree, some of you may not, but I will tell you that the general public is living very much in fear. In other words, by fear, I'm talking about that they're afraid of losing. So folks who thought they had enough to go out and retire in, and they thought their nest eggs were going to be able to carry them forward, have now finding themselves having to continue to work. So here's one of the things that I try to explain to people. The environment is completely changed, and I look at it in simplistic terms that there's three very critical criteria to look at when making an investment choices. Now, this is relative to what I was talking about in terms of building that foundation that I was referring to earlier on. Number one, you want to put it somewhere where it's safe, to address that fear that we talked about. That is very, very important. A lot of folks immediately assume that to put it somewhere safe, that means they're going to give up returns. That is not the case, as I will illustrate here shortly. Number two, the other thing is whatever financial instrument, and I prefer to refer to them as instrument versus product versus type or whatever the case might be, because really what they are is just that. They're a tool, so they're an instrument. In today's world, it's critical that one instrument solves more than just one issue, more than one problem. So if you can accumulate wealth, but yet while knocking out several other things at the same time, doesn't it make sense to go that route? Because one of the things that happened in the traditional financial planning model is that they would have a different instrument or a different product for every little need. And the reason why, think about it. They're in the business of making money, so what they want to do is they want to load you up with as much product as possible, and then they would show you a nice little diagram of a pie to illustrate how well diversified you are. In theory, that sounds really good, but I think the last 3 years, they kind of speak for themselves.
And I would love to get into that with you as far as diversification goes, because I think that's just more than anything, a logical sales pitch than an actual sound strategy.
Well, that's exactly right.
That's a future segment, but
future segment we'll talk about that. And what Mike's referring to is really getting into the typical little interview, and they all use a canned a profile sheet that you fill out with risk tolerance, and then they start talking about asset allocation.
A normal person, it's like, diversification makes sense in case that goes up and this goes,
But again, conversation for another time because you're really washing it out. So again, safety is critical. The next thing is having something that's going to be multi-versatile. I think it's like a double. What do you call that? In any event. And then third, and this one we all love, and I think right now with what the federal government is doing and getting involved with as far as trying to dictate to people what they do and the way the spending is out of control, we want to minimize our tax burden. So bottom line is if you can get something that's going to be safe, that's also going to it's going to give you tax advantages and also going to be versatile, that makes the most sense in the world. So I'm going to give you several bullet points here, and some of these might be a little redundant. Bear with me. I still think it's worth repeating because I cannot emphasize it enough. So one key point is you want it safe, meaning there's no chance, listen to me now, no chance that you lose your money. I'm not talking about minimizing the potential loss. I'm talking about eliminating the chance of losing your money. People think that's not possible. It is possible. Secondly, you want to be able to have that money grow tax deferred. In the best case scenario, that's obviously more desirable. Thirdly, you want to be able to have something that enables you to take out your money tax-free at time of distribution or at the time that you need it. Next thing you also want to be able to do, fourthly, is guarantee that you have some type of interest rate of return. So if you can have at least some type of guarantee, so that means you're not only not going to lose any money, but you're guaranteed some minimum return. That's like having your cake and eating it too. Now, imagine also being able to put it in some type of account or some type of instrument that's protected from creditors. In this litigious society that we live in, I don't care if it's a creditor or just some person who's got it out for you, if there's a place you can put it where that money is going to be protected against any risk, that would be pretty fantastic if you think about it. Next thing also, how about something that doesn't limit how much you can actually put into the account? And by that I'm talking about actual deposits, etc. Now, some of you might be wondering, well, why would they do that? Well, again, relative to if we're talking about long-term, like retirement plans, things of that nature, they do put a ceiling on it. And if you look at the ceiling, I can tell you right now, none of you are going to be able to live.
It's ridiculously small.
It is ridiculously small. You're talking about poverty level.
Yeah,
right?
It's like, what is an IRA or a 401k, like 40,000 a year or something like that?
No, it's a lot less than that.
Yeah.
If you're talking, try like 5,000 to 6,000. 401ks, you can go up to 15% of your income, but even that's capped.
Okay.
And then you have a makeup period once you get past a certain age. But again, that can be a segment for
definitely
for another segment. The other thing is also, how about not having any restrictions? Because speaking of which, what you just brought up, there's all kinds of penalties and everything else if you want to have access to your money, or they restrict when you can have access to your money. Imagine having an instrument where you can actually access your money whenever you need it. What about also being able to use it as collateral? If you do need to go out and tap in on OPM, let's say for a business venture or something like that, you can pledge it as collateral. Remember I mentioned liquidity in our earlier segment? I did that on purpose. Now you have liquidity. This is a great place that it's not only a fantastic place to be able to accumulate wealth, but what about as a repository for moving money in and out?
And when you define liquid, how liquid are we talking about here?
Liquid would be something that you are going to have some deterrence as far as getting access to it. But I'm talking about something where you're not going to have all kinds of sales charges and things of this nature, where you can actually have access to it in a matter of 48 hours or whatever the case might be.
Great, perfect.
All right, so liquid, it means, as far as I'm concerned, is right away.
Okay.
All right, and then the other thing is you want to be able to have use and control of that money. So it's on your terms, not somebody else's. So that means you're going to have access to that money also in the event of a disability. I mean, God forbid something happens to you, so it's not locked up for any indefinite period of time. And then also the account is also guaranteed, and this is kind of redundant here, but that it's not going to go down. Not only are you now not losing money, but what about having the account value go down? You may not be losing your money, but let's say if you have negative returns, so like with a traditional stock portfolio, the case might be, it's volatile. So you may have $150,000 one day, the next statement you get, you're down to 120. As long as you're funding something properly and you stay on schedule, it'll never go down. That would be the ideal.
Perfect.
So the big question is, so where is this instrument? What is this account? What is it? It's the bottom line. It's the Bank of You, which is actually the most powerful bank in the world, which means that as opposed to thinking of a financial institution, you can actually become your own banker. See, here's what a lot of folks don't realize. When you think about the most powerful bank in the world, most think about a global financial institution. But whether you realize it or not, that's not the most powerful bank in the world. Neither is a local bank like the one in your neighborhood. Now, the most powerful bank in the world is actually your bank, and what I like to term as the Bank of You. The Bank of You refers more to a financial position than it does a brick and mortar building where you do your conventional banking. In fact, the Bank of You is simply an account that you set up where you have liquidity, use, and control of the resources deposited. By the end of this session, you're going to look at banking and your money with a whole different take and a whole new meaning. See, most people consider banking and investing to be similar, but what you have to understand is they're very different. However, the primary objective of each is to make money. Consider for a moment how a traditional bank makes money, and this is what a lot of people don't realize. They must first attract customers, well that part's kind of obvious, and then persuade them to deposit the money in their bank. They do this by offering things like free checking, longer teller hours, online banking, and direct deposits for paychecks. They also will pay you interest on the money that you deposit in their bank. They encourage your customers to leave their money in for long periods of time. I mean, this is like what they call them now accounts or CDs or things of that nature. And the longer the period of time that you leave the money in there, the additional benefits that will come along with it, like services for longtime customers. But what's interesting is they also impose early withdrawal penalties for taking that money out after a short period of time. In order to cover the cost of their operations and hopefully make a profit, banks charge more interest than they pay. But how do the banks tell you to make money? By putting your money in their bank, leaving it there, and sitting back and watching the magic of compound interest do its thing. But that's not what they do. They keep their money moving in order to make even more money. Understanding how a local bank makes money will help you apply some of their same wealth accumulation principles to your bank. Because when it comes right down to it, you'll either become a customer of a bank or you'll learn how to be the bank. The choice is yours. Most often when people get a loan from a bank, they already have money elsewhere in a retirement account or in home equity. But since this money is inaccessible, here's the funny part. They're forced to borrow money from a bank using their assets as collateral for the loan. Herein lies the problem. The interest you pay to borrow money quite often offsets the return you earn on the money you have invested. That's one of the costs of borrowing money. Now, more on that later, because I think we can get into a whole segment on the velocity of money, which I think will blow your mind. However, there's a hidden cost to borrowing. If you pay a dollar in interest that you could have avoided, you not only lose that dollar, but you also lose what that dollar could have earned had you not given it away. This is what I refer to as an opportunity cost. Let's take a closer look at an opportunity cost, for example. Suppose you carried a $10,000 credit card balance at 18%. Unfortunately, it's very common today. You have to pay the bank $1,972 of interest over the year. Doing that same thing over 40 years, which it sounds kind of preposterous, but believe it or not, if you look at the average American, they do in fact carry balances like that. So going back to my example of doing the same thing over 40 years, over your lifetime, would result in you losing almost $78,000 in interest. That's a lot of money. But it gets even worse because you did not only lose that interest, you also lost the opportunity to invest that $1,900 each year. Now, let me put this in perspective for you. If you're able to invest that $1,972 in your bank each year, you would have about $305,000 after 40 years, and that's only assuming a 6% rate of return. If you average 8%, you would have almost $500,000. The bank fully understands the power of this principle, which is why banking is so profitable. See, there's a theme here. Don't do what a bank tells you, do what a bank does. That's the key. You either pay interest or you earn interest. There is no in between. So the question is this: would you like to be a customer of the bank, or would you like to be the bank? By now it should be clear that you'll be far better off to learn how to be the bank. So to get started in your bank, you're first going to have to put some money in place that allows you to operate like a bank and also provides additional benefits.
The ones you mentioned earlier.
The ones that I mentioned before. So I'm not going to repeat it again, but that's where I gave you the long bullet list of it being safe, etc. There are many accounts that will allow you to be the bank. However, some are more efficient than others. Some offer potential for higher returns but don't function as well as a bank, while others offer little or no return with few benefits. To help you determine which financial instrument will provide you with the most benefits to use as your bank, you'll obviously want to consult with someone like myself or someone who can think outside of the box in the financial services arena, who truly understands this concept. The bank of you, there's other terms like infinite banking, there's a whole bunch of clever little names for it, but in effect it's the same thing. Many people put money into qualified retirement accounts at work, and again, whether it's your business or not, they'll create 401ks for their employees, IRAs, SEPs, 403bs, if you happen to be a school teacher or something like that, which is really not a bad thing, but especially if the company matches the contributions. However, this money is not accessible. This is one of the things I referred to earlier. They're forced to finance things now like their car. The sad thing is many people will lose more money financing the cars they drive to work than the money they will accumulate in their lifelong savings at work. Now, we're not saying you shouldn't have a car. You just need to have a better way to pay for it. It's easy to see when you're saving money and earning 6% interest, but you're paying 6% on borrowed money. The effect is that you're not moving at all, and instead you're in neutral. The interest you pay on borrowed money should demand at least as much attention, if not more, than the interest you earn, because the interest you pay is avoidable, and avoiding losses is actually less risky and can prove to be more valuable than trying to pick financial instruments that yield higher returns. Unfortunately, many of us focus all of our attention on saving and investing, but little effort on the money we borrow. Let me give you an example. Let's assume you have $30,000 in the bank earning 4%. If you bought a $30,000 car and financed it at 6%, you would be losing money because you could have used your own money. A bank could not make any money paying out 6% while earning only 4%, and neither should you. You need to look at what you're giving away in interest instead of just focusing on the interest you're earning. Now, suppose you would have already started your bank. You take out the $30,000 from your bank and pay cash for the car. But since you're now your own bank, you can pay yourself back at that same 6% interest rate the car dealer was going to charge you had you had financed it with them. At the end of the loan period, you not only have the $30,000 back, but you would also have all the interest you would have given the financial institution as well. You see, you actually finance everything you buy. You either pay interest or you earn interest. Even if you pay cash for something, you're really financing it because you must really consider what the money would have earned you had you kept it, which is called opportunity cost. Imagine being able to avoid paying interest to others and instead redirecting all that interest into your bank. Now you're thinking like a bank. You may be saying to yourself, that sounds good, but where do I come up with all the money to get my bank started? Well, that's a great question. Like most things of value, it'll take some time to get your bank started, but the payoff is huge. You may be surprised to discover that the money you need to get your bank started can often be found in areas where you're currently losing money unknowingly and unnecessarily. In fact, you may even be able to find the money without any impact on your current lifestyle at all. Some common areas where I help people find some of that money that they're spending unknowingly, unnecessarily include things like mortgage payments by making inefficient use of the mortgage, overpaying in taxes, the car payments, credit cards, and college financing, just to name a few.
All right. Awesome stuff, man. So, makes a lot of sense to me. Obviously has a ton of extremely valuable benefits that you really wouldn't find anywhere else, and that's really why I latched onto this. It just makes so much sense. You get so many different uses for your money that you wouldn't traditionally have, and it's perfect for a foundation because it's so safe. So what I wanted to do now is illustrate to people 4 different scenarios based on what people may potentially put into this kind of account on a monthly basis. And we are going to start really small with $1,000 a month. And we're going to extrapolate that over the course of somebody's life, and then we're going to move all the way up to $10,000 a month. And let's see what happens, man. Let's go through the numbers and see how this adds up.